Be the Talk, episode 339, featuring Oleg Lougheed. Welcome to Be the Talk. We go behind the talk 7 days a week for tips and techniques to help you change the world. I'm Nathan Eckel, and a talker myself. I'm interviewing others who change the world with their talk. You can too, even if you've never given a talk before. Let's get started with today's show. We are live with Oleg Lougheed. Oleg, are you ready to talk?
I am.
Oleg Lougheed is a keynote speaker and founder of Overcoming Odds, a nonprofit that focuses on elevating the voices of adoptees and foster youth. Oleg Lougheed, welcome to the talk.
Thank you so much. I'm honored to be here. I love what you're doing, and I love the guests that you've had so far.
Well, thanks so much for joining us. Your talk is called Overcoming the Odds, as I mentioned. I'm really, I tip my hat that I'm not wearing right now, but I tip my hat to you because you've really lived through the cause that you serve right now. You were orphaned at a very young age, and your talk really wasn't so much about that, but about the lessons that you learned coming through the system and going through a lot of real crucial challenges, and yet you brought some real words of wisdom for all of us. You said, be resourceful, envision a better life, believe in yourself, and become bigger than yourself. Please, Oleg, take us behind the talk.
Absolutely. So the talk originally, the whole idea came about from my personal experience in my life of being born in a relatively small town in Russia called Chubarkul, and having a lifestyle that is not typically used to within a traditional family. I was born into a household that had everything you could think of as a child at first, and then one of the things that I've experienced from that early age was that there were some serious hardships that I had to overcome, especially when it came to living without a parental figure and then figuring out life as you go, and ultimately leading me to a decision when I was 9 years old to enter an orphanage. So give up my parents' rights and go into a system that was supposed to be the way to get out, or a better alternative to my current lifestyle. And one of the things that I wanted to share through this is, in today's media especially, one of the things that we see about orphanages is it's a place of horror. It's a place where things are not possible. But for me, despite all the challenges and obstacles that I faced within that system, I view it as a place of opportunity. Because it was through that system that I ultimately was able to come to the United States and be adopted by a family and be able to start this journey of helping other people overcome some of the odds and obstacles that they have within their lives. So the purpose of the talk was to really, in a way, give a recap of the obstacles that I was able to overcome. And then I think the biggest key or tip for overcoming some of those obstacles is really just being able to exercise your voice. Knowing that you have a story to tell and that your experiences are unique, and it is up to you to use that story to help other people uncover their story and find the courage to share it with others.
I think that one of the most amazing parts of what you mentioned, I mean, you viewed this place, instead of, you had a choice of viewing it as a horrific place or a place of opportunity. These kinds of talks, I kind of fall into the personal stoicism category, kind of as a broad category. And we always invoke Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning, and it comes down to that whole central piece. Now, you hadn't read that book in the orphanage, but you aligned yourself with that central message, and you realized that you could choose the way that you saw all the hardships that you had, including, bullying, physical abuse, perhaps other kind, certainly emotional abuse, all of those things, as many of us in Talk Universe have endured, bullying and other forms of abuse, and yet you as a survivor. I mean, you chose your way. Is this a little bit of me putting a little bit of the positive hindsight spin, or was it really like that for you at that young age? Or was it as simple as not really having a better alternative than to see it and pivot in the way that you chose to interpret the situation, Oleg?
Those are all great questions. And I think what ultimately ended up helping me was that I essentially lived another lifestyle prior to entering an orphanage. And I think through that lifestyle, I've experienced enough adversity where I was able to come into the system and really understand what it's all about. So the things you mentioned about bullying and abuse and all that stuff, yes, it did happen. And it happened to multiple kids. And there are instances and examples that I can still go back to in time and essentially replicate of how it happened and why it happened. What's important to understand within that is during my life, the first 9 years had prepared me for that experience. So in a way, just like you said, it's as if I had read that book prior to going into the orphanage. So I was really able to understand what life was about at a very young age.
That's incredible to me, Oleg.
Exactly.
That's really, at 9 years old that you had a framework and a grid to know, wherever you were coming from, it sounds to me like it might have even been worse in some ways, so that it was actually a step up for you to go into this system and not kind of over personalize all of the things that were happening and almost like rack it up to human nature or whatever it is that you did to be able to spin it in that way at the age of 9. I don't know that I can do that at the age of 43 right now.
It's an ongoing battle.
Yeah, well, it always is. So can you talk to us about just the power of choice? I mean, we're all facing different things. Some of us are more advantaged than others right now, but we all have the power of to choose. What would your advice be for whatever issue in our personal or professional or family or emotional life that we're facing right now?
Well, I firmly believe that we do have a choice. We always have a choice. Whether or not we want to live with the consequences, that's another choice that you have to make. So one of the things that has helped me to this particular point is in assessing the situation or a possible outcome, one of the things that I put in my mind is understand that there's going to be the expected and there's the unexpected. The expected is what you think is going to happen based on your previous experience. The unexpected is what actually happens once you make a choice, because you just don't know how certain things will roll out, pan out from there. So I think from here, what's important to understand is that you do have a choice when it comes to everything in life. So whether that means using positive self-talk to improve your day, whether that means surrounding yourself with people who can help you and elevate you to the next level, you have the choice in both of those options. So when it comes to professional career, when it comes to sharing your story or giving your next TED Talk, you have the power to say yes or no to that particular instance. So if you're in a position in the workplace, especially where you understand that things are not going as well and the proper decision for you to make is move on, you have that choice to go to a boss and explain what things are not going well and ultimately come to the answer of saying, no, I don't want to be here anymore. And I think what ends up happening is we sometimes get stuck in indecision because the actual decision becomes so great that we almost lose that choice entirely. And we think, well, if the outcome is going to be so great for me to handle that I ultimately can't even make this decision to begin with now.
Yeah, well, and I love how you categorize, there's going to be a decision point, and then there's going to be what we expect to happen, and then there's this reality world, which is what we don't know is going to happen.
Correct.
And that's the unexpected. I think that is so. Can I use that? Because I think that's going to help me cope, and I think that's going to make things a little easier in my household for everybody else, my dog and my wife who have to deal with me on a day out, day in basis. If I just realize every time I make a decision, there's an unexpected option, which is probably going to happen. I love that. I love that. That's great. As we start pivoting over to the Blitz round, in just a moment, what's your what's your take on how what encouragement can you give us that when we're on the fence? There are people on the fence. They've got what they feel are big decisions right now. It's been, the longer we go before making a decision, the more things stall out and the more things get exaggerated. So again, at the risk of sounding a little redundant, what's your encouragement for them?
Well, my encouragement is to never say you can't do something. It is a lesson that my dad taught me at a very early age. In fact, I remember this moment when I was in sixth grade. The first grade that I came into the States was in 2005. So I was put in the middle of sixth grade. And one of the things that I had to learn, along with many other things, is the English alphabet. So imagine starting at that particular age and you have an alphabet in front of you and your only option is to pick up each letter thousands of times until you get it. So I was sitting with my dad and we were working on a math problem for one of my classes. And I remember I came up to him and I truly couldn't figure out on my own. And I believe as every little kid, instead of actually going through the problem solving process, you just want to get the answer. So I came up to the table and I was expecting him to give me the answer. Instead, he taught me the following. He said, never say you can't do something. And then the second part is he pulled out a sheet of paper and we started essentially solving the problem. And so from that point on, that has been the message that I've been living my life on. And that is never say you can't do something. Once you say that I cannot do something, you've already lost. You've already lost the part of your mindset that actually develops the drive and the resilience to keep going. So once you establish that within your mind and know that there's not a single task that you cannot accomplish, that's when you actually excel and elevate your game to the next level. One of the experiences in addition to this that comes to mind is, as a nonprofit, you have to wear a lot of different hats. And one of the hats that we had to do with our previous seminar in Philadelphia was to call a bunch of different hotels to get rooms donated for speakers for a conference. We ended up calling 127 hotels. Now that's 120.
Good luck. I'm here in Philadelphia, so I mean it's I understand a little bit of that.
Absolutely. So that's 127 times that, or 124 before we got our first yes, that people said no. So at any one of those moments, I could have said, okay, that's it. Or there's no point. Or it's not possible. And in fact, that's some of the messages that we end up receiving throughout a lot of these calls is people would say, well, hotels don't usually do this, or you might as well stop now. But yet continue to keep going and then ask better questions as you go. By the time you hit 30 or 40th call, you start to ask why. What would make you want to say yes? Why did you say no? So it's more so, I think, establishing this model within your life of never giving up and then keep going through every adversity. Know that there is an opportunity within every challenge that you face today.
Oleg Lougheed has the name of the talk is called Overcoming the Odds. We're talking with Oleg Lougheed. This is just really incredible, and we are going to pivot over to you, Talk Universe, for the Blitz round. Hey, Talk Universe. I hope you've been enjoying today's episode with today's guest. But you know what? Many people want more than that. Many people that listen to Be the Talk actually want to give a talk. And if that's you, you're not alone. Listen to the rest of this podcast. At the end, I'll have a free resource for you just for listening. It's time for the Blitz Round with Oleg Lougheed. His talk is called Overcoming the Odds, and you overcame the odds to get this talk accepted. So first question, were you invited to speak or did you apply?
I was invited to speak.
All right. So what advice do you have for other people who are also invited to speak that kind of, on top of their game? They give a lot of speeches. They're very, very busy. And there's a real temptation to just kind of tweak a normal keynote or a presentation instead of really investing the time to give a good TEDx talk like you did. What's your advice for them?
Well, I'd say the first step of all this is you have to stay true to who you are. So the first you have to understand is, what message am I trying to put out there? And why is that message important? So I don't think it's necessarily about making changes to your particular keynote or workshop. I think it's really understanding, why is this message important and who is it serving? One of the things that you might have experienced as a public speaker as well is, once you get on stage, it's an entirely different ballgame. You may have a perception of the people that are sitting right in front of you, but oftentimes it's going to be entirely different. In your mind, you think it's going to be thousands of people who are all relatively the same age as you are. So therefore, how could they not understand this experience? But then you walk into a room and it's people who are 20 years younger or 20 years older. And it maybe is only 100 people or 200 people. So there are a lot of things that I think you have to go through once you get on stage. And I remember one of the things that you were asking the previous guest was whether or not they memorize or they pivot or how they go about that speech. And what I've learned from my experience is that you have to be able to sense the energy within the room. And one of the things that requires is you have to essentially get on stage, at least for me, and really process what's going on. So memorizing doesn't truly work for me when it comes to that, because then I'm not able to sense the engagement that I'm having with the person right across from me or way in the back of the room.
Well, and we're talking about a really intangible, high-level concept right now that all experienced speakers understand, and you don't necessarily you will not understand until you've given 5 or 10 speeches, and that's
Correct.
this idea of connecting, having some kind of rapport with the audience, despite having your preparation, but actually connecting with the audience. So, Oleg, how best can you continue to articulate what we're talking about? It's a really nuanced thing.
Absolutely. Well, I think to begin with, one of the first people that made me realize this is Gary Vaynerchuk. And I remember I was watching it was a keynote that he was giving, I believe it was in London. And it was all about what it was like to get on stage and how he actually prepares for an environment like that. One of the things that was interesting to me was that in his eyes, the thing that he carries over from one speech to another is his background. So he just tells people about where he was born and the type of upbringing he was exposed to give people context. From there, he takes it entirely from what the room gives him. So he feels out the energy and he really tries to understand, what do people want? Why are people here? But at the same time, there's also a risk within that. Because what happens when you do freeze? When you can't find the right words? And so I think what's important for any speaker is you have to be able to speak from the heart. Because during a time when you do freeze or you can't find the words, your heart will find the words. And so the more you rely on that and just your natural abilities, the better you become at it. Versus I think when you memorize certain things, it's that much harder to develop authenticity within a particular speech.
Oleg Lougheed says, when your heart knows how to speak, your heart will find the words, or something to that effect. Just go back about 20 seconds. He said it better than I did. We've been enjoying this Blitz round with Oleg Lougheed. His talk is called Overcoming the Odds. You can watch that talk. We'll have a link. You can type it into YouTube, or you can go to BeTheTalk.com. We'll have a link to that talk in our show notes, as well as you can go to his website. Check out what Oleg is doing at overcomingodds.today. Overcomingodds.today. We'll have a link there also. And we will be right back with the final word of advice in just a moment. Hey, Talk Universe, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. And if you want to give the talk to change the world, but you don't know how or even where to start, no problem at all. Go to BeTheTalk.com/get accepted for my new 5-day email course that'll show you how. Absolutely free. Just go to BeTheTalk.com/get accepted. And we're back with the final word of advice with Oleg Lougheed. What is it?
My final word of advice is, everyone has a story, live yours. Every single person has a story. Every single person has a unique experience that needs to be shared. I believe when that experience is not shared, it is not allowing other people to grow. So if you weren't sitting in your particular seat and giving other people the platform to share their experience, then my particular speech would not exist at this particular time. So I think the final word of advice is to help people understand that they have a story to tell and that there are places that are willing to support those efforts. So it's all about finding those communities, finding those spaces to share your story, and then from there, understanding that your story can change another person's trajectory and perspective in life.
Oleg Lougheed, thank you so much for carving out your valuable time to be on the talk today and sharing your wisdom with Talk Universe.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to Be the Talk. For tips and resources to help you change the world, go to BeTheTalk.com. See you tomorrow.